السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه والتابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. Dear brothers and sisters, welcome back inshallah ta'ala to this other juz that we are discussing. What's more important is to remind ourselves of the previous juz, how it concluded and how does it match and go hand in hand with this juz as well. What's more important is to know the connections between the ajza. Reason number one is because they are a part of surahs. So let's say, for example, like the juz that we're going to look into today, you have Surah Al-Ma'idah coming next, yes, but before that there's Surah Al-Nisa. Surah Al-Nisa is a part of the chapter, part of the juz itself. And if you look at it properly, you end up finding that if Surah Al-Nisa is included in the juz, Surah Al-Nisa in itself has a connection with Surah Al-Ma'idah. But on top of that, what's more important is to understand the fact that because these juz share the same surahs majority of the time, it doesn't mean that they are not as an entity of their own. Every juz can be a what? A world of its own. It can be a universe of its own, especially a surah. A surah is not a chapter. You know, when you look at a chapter, it's different. Like what we can say is that even the ulama of tafsir, if you look at their way of granting translation on verses and surahs generally, you find that, what do they say? Al-ulama yaquluna that a surah in itself is a world of its own. It does not belong to maybe the previous surah or the next surah. But at the same time, Allah has made the surah to be more or less like a chain. Why so? So that they can interconnect. Now, for example, if you look at the previous juz, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is providing us at the very end, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُونُوا قَوَّامِينَ بِالْقِسْطِ شُهَدَاءَ لِلَّهِ وَلَوْ عَلَى أَنفُسِكُمْ أَوِ الْوَالِدَيْنِ وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ. So Allah over here is talking about the word qist, which is justice. How does justice go hand in hand with related to the issue of protection of mankind with legislations that provide them a means as a way out from every single problem if they are going to fall into one. And most importantly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addressed to them the most evil of all enemies, and that is Iblis. Justice is because when we are trying to be just, especially when we know that perhaps we have the upper hand, or maybe it's justice against one of a family member, or maybe it can be a very close person, it can be someone who is very dear to you, or it can be someone who shares the same faith with you but not, and the favor is against, maybe it's against that person, but you decide to become unjust to the one who does not share the same faith with you. My friend, remember this. This deen does not pick and choose when it comes to justice. Bear in mind that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the heavens and the earth, He struck a balance in order for the cosmos and the universe to exist. If you look around you today, they exist with a fine balance. Allah does not play around with it. And Allah does not distort it in whatsoever way. What's the reason behind it? It's not just that, it's because Allah, He takes over the name Al-Adil and takes that attribute to be a part of Him. And remember, when an attribute is given to someone, what does that mean? Once that is attached to you, it means that's who you are. And when Allah called Himself that He is the one who is just, and He is just, and that's an attribute that belongs to Him, that He is the one to be called as just, then we have to be really careful when it comes to balancing the scales. That's why Allah, when He ended the juz with a balance, it means that whenever we judge, we have to judge in accordance to the scales of that which Allah has given us, because that's going to take us to the juz after the one that we want to discuss right now. Lakin, before that, before we even get to the following juz after this one that we want to look into, Allah introduced something called justice to show that mankind, when you are judging and when you are dealing with yourself and you're dealing with people that are quite close to you and far beyond, ensure that it is with justice. Even if the person that is being harmed, or maybe the person that has or maybe does not have the upper hand, and you know they are going to face a punishment, is part of your relatives, ensure that you still judge in accordance with that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us in the scales. Because what's more important is that you notice in the next verses that comes, it's related to the hypocrites. And why so? Hypocrisy causes an imbalance on the face of the earth, I promise you, whether to our faith or humanity at large. We've seen what hypocrisy has done to the earth. Hypocrisy have put down nations, literally, has caused the downfall of nations, let alone anything else. Nations have been destroyed because of hypocrisy. Someone from within does not have a clean heart, and they are manifesting goodness, whereas they are holding grudges, and the opposite of what they are expected to provide to their own people. And the next thing that happens, they cause the downfall of an entire empire or nation or state and beyond that. That's number one. Number two, hypocrisy is like cancer that once it's spread, it's very difficult to get rid of. And the most difficult part is even spotting it. When a person has cancer today, it's not spotted straight away unless now it starts becoming severe, especially with very recent cases. You notice that many people that have cancer, may Allah protect us from it, and for those who are not feeling and those who have it, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them a quick recovery and a cure from the illness. But you notice that cancer does not manifest itself or bring itself forth. What happens is that by the time you realize, it's already took a part of you, of your life. And perhaps doctors might even scare you off and tell you that you only have maybe 1 year, 2 years, or just a few months or a few days to even survive on this earth. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us all. And hypocrisy is the same. Because when a person is a hypocrite, outwardly they're manifesting goodness, oneness, unity, whereas inwardly they're hiding a rejection which is causing them to be an opponent of that certain group. What happens is the fact that you won't be able to spot those people unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants you the ability to do so. Bear that in mind. That's number one. Number two, Allah says also, لا يحب الله الجهر بالسوء من القول إلا من ظلم. Except for the person that has been wronged, injustice has been committed against that person, then that person can use language not vulgar, nor foul, or that which is abusive, but language that is not pleasing. Because remember, language that is not pleasing is even added the type of language that when you ask a dua against someone, when you tell someone, may Allah curse you, those are not good words. Those are evil words. We all know that. And the fact that they are evil and down off-putting, and on top of that, it can cause someone a huge, great of a deal. What happens is that you have to stay away from that. And Allah does not like it. Allah despises it and He dislikes it and He looks down upon it. But the fact that a person has been wronged, what he does, he goes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and seeks for help and asks against whom? The opponent, the enemy that has caused him a problem or her. But it's best for the one that forgives. Bear that in mind. Because another thing that Allah talks about justice, when it comes to just, is about adl and qist. Because this same verse that we started with, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu kunu qawwamina bil qist, it mentions something called qist. But then after that, in the next surah, which is Surah Al-Ma'idah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the same type of word, similarly, and the wording and phrasing. What does He say? Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu kunu qawwamina. Now He kind of literally flips things around. Lillahi shuhada'a bil qist. Become steadfast for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and witnesses of what? Of justice. But then He uses the word what? Qist again. وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ. And the enmity and the animosity of a certain group of people should not cause you to literally retaliate in a negative way to wrong someone just because that person wronged you, where you come to a position now Allah says ala alla ta'dilu, that you end up falling upon what? Injustice. i'dilu huwa aqrabu littaqwa. You have to become just because it is far closer and very much closer to taqwa and God consciousness because of its importance and its severity in a nation. Now, what's the difference between al-adl and al-qist? Let's look at the difference between the two words. Arabic is so beautiful, by the way, and it's a language that is so vast. One word can carry multiple meanings, and one meaning can be in multiple words. But each of those words carry a certain meaning which is specific to it. Bear that in mind. What do we mean by that? If you look at the word al-adil, it's general. أعم من القسط. It is general compared to the word al-qist. What's the difference between al-qist and al-adil? Al-qist is quite specific according to the context used. Now, if you look at al-adil, Allah calls himself the one to be just, who provides justice. And he is the most balancing of every type of creature that would ever exist, because he created balance himself and he takes the attribute of balance, which means that he is just to everyone and everything and every single dabbah or creature or part of his creation. So Allah is just to everything. But when you say al-qist, the difference between al-adl and al-qist is the fact that al-qist is being just according to someone's fair share. So let's say, for example, if you look back in Surah An-Nisa, the correlation between this surah, Surah Al-Ma'idah, and Surah An-Nisa, Allah uses the same word qist at the very beginning of An-Nisa, and somewhere at the not very beginning, but somewhere still at the beginning of Surah Al-Ma'idah, Allah uses the same word, al-qist. Why so? It's because when Allah said, وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تُقْسِطُوا فِي الْيَتَامَى, and if you fear the fact that you won't be able to fulfill justly the rights of the yatama, of the orphans, which means that you won't be able to provide every one of them their fair share that they deserve. Why does Allah have to say that? Because Allah is showing us that what is just and enough for me could not be enough for someone else. And what is not enough for someone else might be enough for someone else. And what is a fair share for another person might not be a fair share for someone else. So for example, if a person commits a murder deliberately, purposely, and it is proven that they've done that, their fair share is to receive a punishment which is equivalent to that which they've done. That's number one. Number two, if you look at, let's say, a person that has literally stolen, which we're going to look into that, which if we're going to term it properly, is the word theft. A person that commits theft, that person is in accordance to their action. They are justly, or they're given their fair share for that which they have done. And according to the Sharia, فَاقْطَعُوا أَيْدِيَهُمَا, that they get their hand amputated. Of how much? Remember, they are maqadir. They are literally mawazin. There's scales over here, all right? And there's measurements on what do you act upon this commandment, or you enact a legislation or a law according to a person's actions. You cannot say because a person stole an egg, then that person has to have their hand amputated. That's not how it works. It depends on what they've stolen. But let's say, for example, a person on a bigger position, maybe a person in a governmental position, if they commit a theft which is not gonna cause, but it's not right for what they've done, maybe someone that has took the billions or the trillions or whatever it might be, this person deserves the same punishment, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said what? If Fatima binti Muhammad, if she was the one to literally commit theft, then I would have amputated her hand despite her being my daughter. Remember when we said about giving someone their fair share, even if it's against your own children or maybe your family, your loved ones, and Allah uses the same one over here. Why so? Because Allah is showing us, look, what is fair for one person doesn't have to be fair for the other one. So when you have to be just, make sure that you be just in accordance to that person's needs or that person's situation. Then Allah clarifies this very clearly. I'm not going to look into the Israelites, their rebellion, or maybe look into their disobedience, which caused them to be of those that would wander the lands of Jerusalem for 40 years. I don't want to mention that example. I want to use the example of Qabil and Habil, the children of Adam. One of them desires something, and the other one desires maybe the same. But one understands the causality, the problems, and the negativity and the results of imbalance once the scales are tipped to one side, and the other one does not, because they are literally following their own whims and desires. What happened is that while delivering offers, one of them sincerely delivered an offer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whereas the other one decided to do what? To deliver an offer, but that which they just had to do it. It's not true. Guess what happens next? The one who was sincere enough and gave the best of offers, their offer was accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And because of this, that person, the brother, did not see the injustice that they've committed and decided to follow on their emotions. And what did they cause? The death of the first child of Adam. Hence today we pass away and is still attributed back to him. When he caused this death, what has he caused? He has caused an imbalance, because that wasn't the share and fairness to the brother that he murdered. That's not how it works. Hence, qist is applied over here. And when he tipped the balance, he was not able to know exactly what happened. Hence, Allah mentioned, min ajli dhalik. Because of that, katabna ala bani Israila, we have literally prescribed upon the Israelites and inspired upon them, annahu man qatala nafsan bighayri nafs. The one who literally murders a soul without a reason to murder that soul, or without another soul, basically as a reprimand or reciprocity, as an action because the law works like this. You are given that which you deserve in accordance to that what you've done. Allah is that fair. That's how it works. It's as if you have literally murdered humanity at large. And the one who gives life to one life, then they have literally kept alive humanity at large. Completely like that. Why does Allah have to say that? It's because the loss of one life, it will cause a huge imbalance on earth. Imagine that person passes away, and that person might be a son of someone that used to benefit them, used to fetch for their food, their bread, their water, and maybe take care of parents. That one son can be a husband. Maybe he's the one that was the breadwinner, and on top of that, he was the one who was teaching his children. Now the father is gone. He's been murdered. What happens next? These children don't have a teacher. The wife is widowed. Number two, the parents are left stranded. They have no help or assistance anymore. And maybe these people are going to suffer on earth because of the imbalance caused by one person. So you're causing a lot of people trouble. And this one man force would have been a labor force on this earth to bring in huge results of positivity and development on this earth. Think about it. So you've caused an imbalance by taking away life. So bear in mind, when you use the word al-qist, you remember it's used in accordance to a situation. But al-adl is general, that you do what? You act with justice to everyone, without exception. It doesn't matter how you act justly, but you have to act justly to everyone with justice. You have to act like that. However, we have to remember something. Allah uses these terms in the previous surah and the previous juz and this current juz. Why so? What's more important? The reason behind is because the next thing that Allah talks about when you look at the end of Surah Al-Ma'idah following to Surah Al-An'am, I would want to take the end of Surah Al-Ma'idah, then come back to somewhere in the middle of Surah Al-Ma'idah. Allah talks about something extremely important. Isa alayhi salam, Jesus the son of Mary. Jesus the son of Mary, he is the one that Trinity is claimed because of him. Because of him, people claim that he is the son of God. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains about this, and he harshly engaged in conversation by interrogating Isa alayhi salam when Allah wanted to confirm the statement of Isa alayhi salam, whether he said it or not, by asking him at the near end of the surah, وَإِذْ قَالَ اللَّهُ يَا عِيسَى ابْنَ مَرْيَمَ, O Jesus, the son of Mary, أَأَنْتَ قُلْتَ لِلنَّاسِ اتَّخِذُونِي وَأُمِّيَ إِلَهَيْنِ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ. Are you the one that told people, regard me and my mother to be two gods other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Isa literally was shocked and out of awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and on top of that the fear and the surprise, he says, Subhanak, exalted are you, O Allah. ما يكون لي أن أقول ما ليس لي بحق إن كنت قلته فقد علمته تعلم ما في نفسي ولا أعلم ما في نفسك. I am not, or was not to be the one to say that which was not right, that which is not just, because haqq is justice at the same time. If I was to say it, and if I did say it, you would have found out about that a long time ago, Ya Allah. You know what's inside me. I don't have any idea of that which is inside you. I don't have knowledge of that. إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ عَلَّامُ الْغُيُوبِ. You are oft knowledgeable of that which is the unseen. knowledge of the unseen belongs to you, Ya Allah. We have no access to that. Immediately, that proves the fact that the moment you say that, as Allah says, تكاد السماوات يتفطرن منه وتنشق الأرض وتخر الجبال هدا. The heavens are about to split up and to literally rip up. And on top of that, the earth is about to split open wide and the mountains are shaking severely the moment when they say, أَن دَعَوْا لِلرَّحْمَنِ وَلَدًا. They invoked upon Allah that Allah has begotten a child. Allah has not begotten a child. And the moment one says that, what do they cause? They cause a severe imbalance on earth. An imbalance to a level where the arsh of Ar-Rahman or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's universe, it trembles out of fear and out of consciousness and literally rejecting and neglecting the fact that these people have said this, because it is not a balance and it's not just for Allah to have these claims provided to him, because it doesn't work that way. How can Allah beget a child and he is the omnipotent that literally you cannot say that today if a person is omnipotent then that person can have someone to take over, leaving behind a legacy, then that person is literally vulnerable. Those are matters of aqeedah. That's number one. Number two, Allah was talking about rulers, hukam. وَأَنِ احْكُمْ بَيْنَهُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهِ. We said that the word hukm comes from what? Comes from hikmah. Why so? Hikmah means wisdom. Where does wisdom come from? Remember at the very beginning when we started the series, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, كَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا. Just like how Allah sent upon you, رَسُولًا مِنْكُمْ, a messenger from among you, يَتْلُو عَلَيْكُمْ آيَاتِنَا. He is reciting our verses upon you. وَيُزَكِّيكُمْ, and He is purifying you with them. وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ, and He is teaching you the book and wisdom, which means that the book in itself is wisdom, and also the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam are part of wisdom as well, of that which the book has come with. So as a package, this entire deen's knowledge is wisdom, which means if you are going to judge, the only wisdom you can judge by is that of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because using our whims and our desires is going to cause injustice on earth. So for example, someone comes to ask you a question, and you go back to that person, you go respond back to them without including Allah and His Messenger, and you only answer back to them in accordance to what you think is right. And you end up causing a huge problem in that person's life. Guess what happens next? This is when you find that people, and أناس في هذه الأيام يفتون بغير علم وليس لهم أهلية. They are giving fatwa with no knowledge, and they don't even have that right to do so. Hence, we're going to talk about knowledge in the next juz, but we don't want to enter into that yet because it ties together with justice and the issue of the scales and the tipping of the scales and causing an imbalance on earth. What you need to understand is the fact that when you judge and rule in accordance to that which in that of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought to us as law. When He says that وَلَا تَتَّبِعْ أَهْوَاءَهُم, and do not follow their desires. Because once you do that, the balance is going to be off limits. And when it goes off limits, khalas, nothing is going to be stable anymore. And stabilizing the balance again is another long journey, a long task, very tedious at the same time, that you won't be able to bring back. If you might be able to bring back, and worst comes to worst is the fact that you won't be able to bring it back. So what we need to understand is this: leave from this lesson knowing that if Allah wants us to be just and be fair to others, fairness is not by just being just. For example, if you have two children, one is a girl and one is a boy. I've used this example before. A boy wants a Paw Patrol and a girl wants a Cinderella. You don't go to a girl and tell her, because your brother has a Paw Patrol, you have to go for a Paw Patrol and take Sky rather than taking Marshall. That's not how it works. How it works is the fact that if this is a boy and he wants a toy such as this one, give him that toy which is yaliqu bihi, which is in accordance and equivalent to him. But when it comes to a girl, if the girl wants a Barbie, give the girl a Barbie, because that's what just to her is fair for her. As long as it's a toy, you are just to both of them. That is al-adil. But when you do al-qist, you give them that which they deserve. That's how it works. And even when they're wrong, you only punish them in accordance to the action that they've committed, not beyond that. That would be injustice, because that wouldn't be fair for those people, that you are literally committing that injustice upon them. Even though they are wrong, but you are literally punishing them more than what they have done and committed as an act of crime. Bear that in mind. On top of that, what you need to understand is always leave with the fact that out there, because of injustice and the tipping of the balance and the scales today, what has happened is that many families today are not intact. Many families are severed, many families are not really together anymore, and those ties are literally broken. And the ties are not there anymore. Trust me or not. They're torn. And because of what reason? Because the man literally does not want to act as a responsible husband, or the wife does not want to act as a responsible husband. Bear in mind, you are a nuclear family. Together, you work strongly and firmly. And each one of you, if you fulfill your responsibilities, you end up finding yourself becoming as just as possible you can be and being fair for the other one. But if each one of you want to take the roles of the other, it's not going to work. The same applies to the rulers and the same applies to the laymen. All we have to do is become fair to every single person. Deal with a young child in accordance to how they are, and deal with an elderly man in accordance to how they are. But you can't act similarly and comparing scenarios just because you see that's the way of justice. Allah has shown us how it works, and we have to act in accordance. So in the next juz, what we're going to discuss in regards to the importance of knowledge, and not only that, talking and speaking and answering back in with knowledge, and leaving knowledge, or maybe the issue of fatwa, to the people that they are the righteous ones or the right ones which they deserve, rather than the ones that today they claim knowledge whereas they don't have that knowledge. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us, and most importantly, we're going to look at what problems have these issues caused as well. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.